1925. Pierre Bonnard acquires a modest house and garden at Le Canet in the hills. The subject of his last painting still blossoms in the garden. A few days before his death, Bonnard tells his nephew, Charles Terrasse, to paint the yellow patch in the left-hand corner of the picture, as he felt too weak to do it himself. It is a final burst of color, characteristic of the painter's lifelong search for light. This final eruption of color on his last painting explains the title of this film, which is a quotation from the painter himself. In search of pure color. Bonnard at 80, the last year of his life, photographed in his studio by Henri Cartier-Bresson. Another of the paintings is by Renoir and bears the dedication to my friend Bonnard. Bonnard and Renoir share the same enthusiasm for the light of the Mediterranean. Let us accompany the painter on one of his early morning walks in the hills overlooking the Bay of Cannes. The artist captures his impressions in quick sketches. The dots and lines simultaneously denote the colors, which he mixes later in his studio. Thus, light and form emerge from the play of colored masses, without the assistance of values or shadows. He observes,
"Drawing is feeling, color an act of reason."
In 1909, while visiting the painter Henri Monguin in Saint-Tropez, Bonnard discovers the beauty of the south of France for himself. He later reflects,
"It seemed to me like something from 1001 Nights."
In his painting, Bonnard is not concerned with content, the depiction of people or the representation of events. His theme is the arrangement of colors and forms. Through constant effort, he is finally able to achieve in pictures painted in his studio the spontaneous reproduction of an impression. Like a novelist such as Proust, who sitting at his desk creates literature from the diversities of Parisian life. The painter summarizes the creative process as follows.
"It is not a question of painting life, but rather of giving life to painting."
One of the most important events of the painter's life is his meeting with Claude Monet. In 1912, Bonnard acquires a house near Vernon, which he calls Ma Roulotte, my caravan. The terrace affords a glimpse of the Seine through the trees and overgrown vegetation. Nearby, in his garden at Giverny, Monet is working on his first water lily paintings. It is possible to see Monet's influence in the meticulously composed paintings of this period. This is only to be expected, since Bonnard saw a great deal of his neighbor. Even after close study, it is not easy to distinguish the various influences on Bonnard's painting. In his youth, Bonnard belonged to the avant-garde. He collaborated on the Revue Blanche and designed sets for Alfred Jarry's Ubu Roi. In Bonnard, anarchism and bourgeois reason are evenly balanced. He remains true to himself, belongs to no movement, and is simply concerned with creating something individual. He is critical of Cubism and declares,
"Cubism was detrimental to those who had no formal training. For those who could paint, it was useful."
Bonnard is receptive to the paintings of his contemporaries. He keeps himself informed by visiting exhibitions and galleries. But after the Nabi, he joins no new movement. He wants only to be a painter of feelings. He himself remarks,
"A painter of feelings creates a self-contained world. A painting is like a book. It retains its meaning wherever it is hung. One always imagines that such painters spend a lot of time doing nothing, just observing their surroundings and meditating. They are rare birds indeed."
In his later paintings, the use of color borders on abstraction. Bonnard comes close to the Monet of the first water lily paintings. For Bonnard, color is everything. Another glance at the studio wall reveals, next to the water lily, Vermeer's A Street in Delft, together with several other postcards.
Take these reproductions, for instance. You can make something beautiful out of anything.
So says Bonnard, and the banal subject of the picture he painted in 1929, entitled The Palm, proves his point. Let us turn now to another postcard. This one has not been stuck to the studio wall. It is a view of Amsterdam sent to him in 1925. The sender was Henri Matisse. Vive la peinture, long live painting. These words of encouragement bear witness to a long friendship. The two painters had met in 1910, a time when Bonnard's painting was undergoing radical change. 1925, Vive la peinture. Bonnard uses this motto as the title of one of his paintings. 15 years later, the two painters become particularly close. Bonnard now lives at Le Canet, at Matisse at Cimiez above Nice. During the austerity of the Second World War, both painters are lonely, and they pay each other frequent visits and correspond. Their exchange of letters is a wonderful testimony to their deep friendship. On the 7th of September, Matisse writes to Bonnard, "I think it would do me the world of good to pay you a visit. In any case, the sight of your painting makes life more bearable. And as far as my work is concerned, it helps me to adopt a more relaxed attitude." Bonnard to Matisse, May 1946.
Your two paintings embellish, yes, embellish my dining room. The ochre-colored walls of the room provide the perfect background. In particular, the painting of the lady with the necklace seems to glow. In the evening, the red is magnificent. During the day, the blue is the dominant color. What intensity! Every day I make new observations and am grateful to you for giving me a source both of pleasure and of visual instruction.
There are further mysteries among the pictures. Against the Light, painted in 1908, the reflection of his model, Marthe, is possibly a conscious echo of a classical statue.
The beauty of a classical marble statue is the sum of all the movements that went into its creation.
The same is true of Bonnard's own paintings. As he himself says,
A painting consists of a series of coloured marks which combine together to form the work on which the eye can linger undisturbed.
the last reproduction on Bonnard's studio wall is the most difficult to account for. It is a cubist figure by Picasso. We know that Picasso did not like Bonnard's painting, and according to François Gillot, he expressed his opinion in no uncertain terms. I don't like Bonnard. I don't want anything to do with him. He is not a modern painter in the true sense of the word. He merely obeys nature. He doesn't transcend it. Bonnard is nothing more than a neo-impressionist, a decadent. Bonnard is deeply hurt by the hostility of Picasso and his circle. In 1933, he writes to his nephew, Charles Terrasse.
I am working hard and immersing myself more and more in that old-fashioned passion which for me is painting. Perhaps I am one of the last in this field.
As if to give the lie to all his critics, it is during this period that he produces his most beautiful nudes. This is Martha, Bonnard's model, and since 1925, his wife. She shares his life for more than half a century. They met in 1893. In 1895, Bonnard paints her for the first time. Until her death in 1942, Bonnard paints Martha again and again in the intimacy of her personal surroundings. Martha has a delicate constitution. Doctors prescribe periods of convalescence and a change of air. Bonnard and Martha travel to Arcachon, Deauville, La Baule, Saint-Honoré-les-Bains, Luxeuil, and other spas. Even in hotels, the painter continues working, fixing his canvases to the walls with drawing pins. It seems that Bonnard has known only one passion in his uneventful life: painting. Despite the passage of time, Martha remains young in his paintings. Could it be that the painter was always conjuring up the ideal picture of the love of his youth? Or was it that Martha was afraid of old age and always insisted on being painted as a young woman? One painting seems to refer to Martha's death. It is the painting completed in 1943 entitled Interior at Le Canet. On the left-hand side of the picture, a female nude fades into the darkness, whilst on the right, an abandoned blue powder puff catches the eye, and like a fetish, conjures up a female presence. Bonnard paints his self-portraits with unflinching honesty. In them are captured his sense of time running out, his weariness of life, and the inexorable decline of his health. These paintings are moments of truth in which the painter gives away something of himself. Bonnard does this with dignity and without any trace of vanity. These are moments of self-knowledge. The The Japanese Nabi has become an Oriental ascetic. November 1940, he writes to Matisse.
My work is progressing very well. I dream of discovering the absolute.
Bonnard lets us share these dreams. He left behind a series of notebooks, with the aid of which we can reconstruct the development of his oeuvre. For close on 30 years, the painter uses sketches to capture fleeting impressions. There is not one of Bonnard's paintings which is not based on a sketch. As well as the sketches, the notebooks contain other entries, including daily observations on the weather, wherever Bonnard happened to be. He is interested less in the events of each day than in the meteorological conditions.
Nice weather, but cold. Vermilion mingles with the orange shadows, violet mingles with the grey.
The sketches are studies for the paintings. Bonnard later mixes the colors for them in his studio. But what kind of development do these paintings reveal? A closer examination of this painting, Landscape in Normandy, painted in 1930, reveals figures which the painter allows almost to dissolve into the colors. Painting borders on abstraction, and in his notebook he expresses the thought.
People always speak of the power of